Hey again, TYT Army, and welcome to TYT Community. With me, I have Daniel Aviles, and I have the beautiful and talented Rhiannon Avenine. And today we're gonna continue our theme of poverty and minimum wage and all that. And I want to show you actually a clip of Robert Reich. He's part of the TYT regulators, so check them out on YouTube. And basically, he needs to explain the myth of perpetrated by the 1% of how Americans are living beyond their means. So let's check this clip out.
Hi, I'm Robert Reich, and the topic today is the myth, and it is a myth, of Americans living beyond our means. Now, you will be hearing over the next weeks or months that there is no serious alternative to cutting Social Security and Medicare, raising taxes on the middle class, and decimating what's left of federal discretionary spending on everything from education to job training to highways and basic research. Well, that is baloney. Most of the people making this argument are very wealthy or are sponsored by the very wealthy. Wall Street moguls like Pete Peterson, his Fix the Debt Brigade, the Business Roundtable. All of this is packaged in a mythology that Americans have been living beyond our means. We have been, according to this view, unwilling to pay for what we want government to do for us, and we are now reaching the day of reckoning. The truth is most Americans have not been living beyond their means. The problem is their means haven't been keeping up with the growth of the economy, which is why most of us need better education, infrastructure, health care, stronger safety nets. The real median wage is only slightly higher now than it was 30 years ago, even though the economy is twice as large as it was 30 years ago. The only people whose means have soared are at the very top because they've received almost all the gains from growth. Over the last 3 decades, the top 1%'s share of the nation's income has doubled. The top 1/10 of 1%'s share has tripled. The richest 1/10 of 1% is now earning as much as the bottom 120 million Americans put together. And if you look at wealth, wealth has become even more concentrated than income. Income, you see, is a stream of money. Wealth is the pool into which that stream flows. The richest 1% now own more than 35% of all of the nation's household wealth, 38% of the nation's financial assets, including stocks and pension funds. Think about this. The richest 400 Americans have more wealth than the bottom 150 million of us put together. Those 6 Walmart heirs have more wealth than the bottom 33 million American families combined. So why are we even contemplating cutting programs the middle class and poor depend on and raising their taxes? We should instead tax the vast accumulations of wealth that are now in the hands of a relative few. To the extent most Americans have any wealth at all, it's in their homes, whose prices have stopped falling in most of the country, but are still down almost 30% from their 2006 peak. Yet homes are subject to the only major tax on wealth, property taxes. So why not a tax on wealth at the top? A small 2% surtax on the wealth of the richest 1/2 of 1% of Americans, owning more than $7.2 million of assets, would generate at least $70 billion a year. That's $750 billion over the decade. Together with revenues from the fiscal cliff deal, that's $1.4 trillion, which just about equals the spending cuts the White House has already agreed to. Now, it seems to me that's a pretty good start on deficit reduction. If we want more deficit reduction, then raise the wealth tax to 3% on the super rich. The idea that most Americans have been living beyond their means is pure fantasy, perpetrated by a small minority at the top, whose means have gone through the stratosphere. That's where America's wealth has accumulated. There is no justification for reducing our budget deficit by adding to the burdens on average Americans and the poor. Thanks.
All right, I just want to start this out by saying that I don't think there's anybody in Washington, save for a couple of people, that are even worried about the deficit. Do you think these Republicans care about the debt and deficit? When they won't even vote against repealing oil subsidies. But anyway,
big
I
agriculture.
want to open it up.
Well, why would they care? Because they're rich, and we already know that the wealthiest people in this country are wealthier than anyone has ever been in the history of our nation. The deficit has only been affecting us,
And
not
yet,
them.
well, of course, but then you see all these Republicans that are using the debt and deficit like, oh my God, we have to cut social services, we have to cut
Of
Social
course, they're
Security,
using
we have
it
to cut
as an
Medicare.
excuse. They're using it as an excuse to get what they want in Congress passed, but
Exactly.
they don't actually care about it.
You know what they want to do? You know what they're going to use this of, and especially coming up in the sequester, is they want to do what George Bush failed to do after his reelection in 2004. They want to privatize Social Security. The banks are just salivating. They cannot wait to get their hands on all of that Social Security money, because they can take that and use it just like they did the depositor money to go and spend that once again in the Wall Street casino. I mean, we should all be seeing this game.
They want to privatize everything. I mean, they want to make a profit off of everything, so they want to privatize everything, whether it be our prison systems, our school
education systems, health care, retirement accounts.
The average American person is not necessarily, the majority of them are not living beyond their means per se. Beyond means based on their income, yes. The reason why is because their income does not support what we consider a normal American standard of living. The Republicans like to say the poor are not poor anymore. They have a refrigerator. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, and a microwave
Right.
too. They have a microwave.
They got a microwave now.
They have cell phones.
Oh yeah, they have cell phones. No, now Obama phone.
Some of them even have the internet. The spoiled bastards.
Subsidized internet and the scooter store, yeah.
But the thing is, I would never begrudge a poor person who has somehow managed to find access to technology. I mean, you don't know their story. Why are we judging them? Maybe it was a gift from a family member. Maybe it was, there was one person that got a smartphone and it was counted as 2 years worth of Christmas presents from one of her parents. So, you can't judge people. And also, poor people need access to technology, because if you don't have access to technology, you lose social aspects of your life. You use occupational possibilities. You lose possibilities of going back to school.
Oh, and here's another point to add to those. You know that most employers now do their do job applications online. No longer do you really go into a place and fill out an application. Yes, there are places that you can still do that, but the majority of jobs employers out there will now tell you, oh, just go fill out an application online. Here's our website. If you don't have access to the internet, and this is great actually. This kind of ties into what was it? The United Nations had actually said that internet is now
a necessity?
It's now a human right, and they want to make it so that free internet access, free Wi-Fi is available all over the United States. And I think that that's a great thing, because there are so many different things that people rely on the internet for, and getting jobs is one of them.
Right, yeah, the internet and technology is just something we need now in order to function in everyday life. And in order to get ahead, even the poorest people need access to the internet.
Not just to get ahead, just to stay with it. Like I said, you're not going to be able to apply for most of those jobs to get yourself out of poverty, to get yourself an income so that you can take care of yourself, if you don't have the internet to be able to apply for the job. Now, there are some places, public places, that you can go to use internet access, libraries and such, but a lot of those places rely on federal funding that the Republicans want to cut.
And there are smaller areas around here, smaller villages and towns that don't have a library. And also, say you're working full-time and you want to get ahead, you want to go back to school and get your education. Yeah. Well, the library is only open during the day when you're going to work, so you have no opportunity to use public computers during the day. So it's very hard. I tried it. It's almost impossible to go to school and not have a computer with internet access at home.
Oh, once again, they're trying to rip out the opportunity away from people to get ahead while saying, well, that's okay. Bootstraps. Here's your bootstraps. Get on to it. Oh, by the way, I just cut funding to your library. Sad day for you.
As far as Americans living beyond their means, the people forget to overlook why we in a debt bubble we are now. Not necessarily because of the Americans' purchasing power due to credit cards and credit, but because the top 1% of corporate America doesn't want to invest in revenue. In turn, they themselves are just sliding the credit card on the Chinese e-reader and basically subsidizing our economy just to maintain kicking the can down the road and building up the debt.
Oh, now, bringing up credit cards actually is actually a pretty good point, because our credit card debt is pretty close to $1 trillion now in consumer credit card debt, yes, which is only surpassed by student loans.
Yep.
And then of course followed in third place by medical debt. So it's not that we're living beyond our means. It's that our means have become so much harder to fulfill. Look at how much of a price increase medical care has gotten. I mean, it's incredible.
I mean, you want to get down to the concept of just free market capitalism and no competition and set greed. It costs more to make a can of Pepsi than it costs to make an IV bag. But you can buy a can of Pepsi, which is recycled aluminum, sugar, caramel color, sucrose, high fructose corn syrup, etc., secret formula. It will cost you at your average vending machine anywhere between 75 cents to $1 for a can. It costs them more to make that can to make an IV bag. You want to take a wild guess on how much an IV bag costs? $180 for a plastic and saline and water.
Well, and that's funny because do you realize a lot of those ingredients in Pepsi, especially the high fructose corn syrup, is heavily subsidized by the government.
To big agriculture, yes.
Of course.
Personal question, Jeff. You've been researching this more than I have. The sequester is now, 3 weeks off now?
It's at least a couple of weeks away. I know it got kicked down the road, a couple of months.
Here's the question: do you think that there are policies that are put in place by Simpson and Bowles to cut the subsidy to big agriculture and the petroleum industry? Do you think that these cuts will never take place at all? That the can will be continued to be kicked down the road?
Yes, and I can say that the can is already being talked about being kicked. I saw an article today where President Obama was actually saying, "Good guys, we need to kick the can down the road. $85 billion in sequester cuts is they're going to try and delay it immediately for at least another couple of months until they come up with a plan." Look, I don't see them cutting oil subsidies. I don't see them cutting any subsidies to these big businesses. You know why? Because it's the money. You got to follow the money, Lebowski. It's gonna. These congressmen are getting paid by these big corporate interests, and what do those corporate interests want? They want those subsidies. They want to keep us giving. They want to keep on giving them taxpayer money, and they're saying, "Look, hey, congressman, you better not vote to end my subsidy, or I will fund a primary challenge against you." And that's really what it's become all about. So no, in response to your question, no, I don't see them cutting shit, except for stuff to help the middle class and the poor.
Well, what I don't understand is the American populace that is very well distracted very much during the chariot races and the gladiator arenas back in the days of the Roman Empire. I'm going to hence reference NASCAR. Those people should be holding signs saying, "NASCAR, give me my money back."
Yeah, but most of these people, they don't know that we're giving subsidies to NASCAR. It was only the fact that, if you really looked into the details of the fiscal cliff deal, that that NASCAR, what is it, Hollywood Studios, Disney, Goldman Sachs,
yeah.
all of them, you know, and even certain banks that keep money overseas from being taxed, they got subsidies during this deal. But you don't hear that on mainstream news.
Okay,
you can't turn on CNN and see
right.
that.
And okay, this is a very, very good reason. That's the main reason. What you just said right there. That's the main reason why corporations and Republicans are perfectly in favor of cutting libraries, cutting education, cutting technology, cutting anything that they need to keep poor people that they're screwing over right now as ignorant as possible, as desperate as possible, as busy as possible, because now the poor people, most of the people I talk to on a daily basis that are truly affected by what's going on, do not know it because they are ignorant, because they have no access to technology, because they don't follow the news, because they're working too hard every day to want to bother to pay attention to these sorts of things. Keep them desperate, keep them ignorant, keep them uneducated, and you can do whatever you want to them.
Not only that, but you know, most of the mainstream media is following this example perfectly, because they don't report on these things. Like I said before, you're not going to tune into CNN and notice and see that, oh look, Goldman Sachs got a subsidy for building in a Liberty Zone, and people are going to ask, well, what the fuck's a Liberty Zone? That was a policy.
Yeah.
Find me a poor reporter. Find me a poor
They-
reporter on CNN that is not married to someone wealthy or is wealthy
Yeah.
on CNN.
Well, CNN is barely a news channel anymore anyway. I mean, they're sort of halfway to Fox at this point. They've
More
gotten rid of all their
Entertainment Tonight.
investigative reporters. How can you be a news station if you don't have investigative reporters?
Yeah, they canceled all of that.
All right, final points. Daniel, you start.
Unregulated free market capitalism is practically fallen flat on its face over the past 30 years. Need we say more? They like to make us out to be the moochers, and turns out they're the biggest gluttons that ever walked the planet. The end. Back to
Okay.
Jeff.
All right, Jeff.
You know, it goes back to corporations and being the biggest welfare queens in the world has ever seen. You know, Robert Reich breaks it down beautifully, and I think I definitely agree with his point. It's not because we're living beyond our means. It's because, you know, just meeting our means has become so much harder since Reagan. Essentially Reagan, because that's, if you pay attention to any of those graphs, you see the line where it starts to split, and where wages continue stagnant, productivity goes up, and corporate profits goes up. That happened around the time of Reagan. And that's it for that.
All right. Poverty is something that's so preventable in our society and in our country. The only reason poverty continues to exist is because there's such an inherent imbalance in our system that, like you said, really started to culminate during Reagan's period. If we were to tax the rich at a fair rate, and if we were to end these government subsidies, and if we were to cut back on our defense, then we would have enough wealth in this country to not only get rid of the deficit, but to rise practically everyone out of poverty. We could get the homeless people off the street. We could make sure that there's no one starving in this country. There's no excuse except for the fact that the people in charge are greedy, and they're doing everything in their power to keep us helpless and ignorant. And we need to fight that. We need to fight that through education and community. We need to stop being apathetic, and we need to start paying attention. All right, I'm done.
All right. Thank you all for watching this clip. If you have an opinion on this and you want to tell it to our face, email me at tytcommunityshow@gmail.com. We'll get you on the show, and we'll have a great discussion. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again.